Hello, hello. I'm Strider, your host here at Author in the Headlights, and I want to thank you for joining us. And before we get started, if you'll hit that subscribe button down in the corner, you won't miss a single episode. This morning, we have a project that we've been working on this year. We have Dena Weigel. Good morning, Dena.
Good morning. How are you?
Just fine. And we talked with you earlier this year and about being a new author coming about. And since that time, you have just been published. I mean, just like this week, next week, somewhere. It's brand new. So we'll go into that about what it's like being a new author, newly published, and all those things. Hey, welcome to the show again.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, I want to get right down to business here because Author in the Headlights is for readers and writers, and there's always people that would like to write and they think they would like to write, but they maybe don't know enough or how to go about the process it takes. Is it scary? Is it easy? All of those things. If you don't mind helping us out, we can help them out and make this work really well today. So, your book that just got published is The Byzantine Cross.
Right, right.
Tell us something about the story. I happen to know some because we talked about it before, but explain it again.
Well, it's similar to a Clive Cussler or Dan Brown story. It's about a woman who was with the OSS during World War II and was not released in a good way. She got released based up on some trumped up charges that somebody else had stolen some maps. We find her in New York. She's working at an art insurance place and not fulfilled, not enjoying her life. She gets called back in by her former handler to now go work for the CIA, and they want her to go after a mysterious ancient artifact called the Byzantine Cross that they think might have some supernatural powers that could play into some mass weapon and so she has to go into the Kremlin to steal it. She does work with a double agent there, but things go off the rails. She's also being followed by a Russian hitman who's very dangerous. He's working with a person who really wants the cross and trying to take it from her before she can get it back to the CIA. So it's a lot of adventure, a lot of thrill rides. There's car chases, there's gunfights, there's sneaking through the Kremlin. Um, it's a wild ride.
Well, it sounds interesting, and I happen to like it in particular because, well, I like those authors and I like those kinds of stories. Espionage, a little bit of sneak work, talking about historic artifacts and things, let alone going into some supernatural problem, which, by the way, for those that aren't real history buffs, really was a thing in World War II. It was a thing with the Hitler regime and the Nazis looking for all those things, and it makes a great story and one that is even history based. That's exciting to me. That
Yeah,
sounds great.
I found the research behind this. So like it was almost like hard to stop researching
Mhm.
because everything is just so fascinating. I researched the spies during World War II, specifically women spies who had such a bigger role than you would even imagine that we don't hear about much. So I was really happy to highlight that and then all the Nazi, fighting for these supernatural things. And yeah, it was a lot. And their connections with the church and how that all went down, that was interesting. So it was a lot of fun.
And
Yeah.
that's part of the reason we do it for real, because we have fun writing. It may be a tremendous amount of work. And sometimes you go, I don't know if it's worth it. And monetarily, it may not be, but you get to express yourself and people get to be part of what you're doing.
Yeah, and I know I sound nerdy when I say this, but when you write something that like just really hits the mark and it has that right rhythm and it just brings like everything together. Oh, I just love that feeling that it's like, oh, that is what I wanted to like have the reader feel and know.
And
Totally.
I do say that all the time. I say I'll listen back to my books, which are on Audible and other audio books. And I go, gosh, it is so hard to believe I actually wrote that thing.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's like, where did that come from?
So that's good. Now you have a female protagonist.
Yes, and she's kind of an amalgam of a lot of the spies and journalists, women that were in the war covering things. So it brought a lot of their kind of energy to it, I hope.
Okay, now we got the good story going there. So every author writes a book. Otherwise, they're not an author, right?
Yeah.
So they write their book, say they're new at this process, or maybe they've written, but they've never really published. So, how did you go about that process? How did you get published?
Well, I'm so new to this whole thing that I didn't even understand the differences between publishers.
Mhm.
I joined the Pacific Northwest Writers Association and I went to their conferences and I pitched, not really knowing anything. I just took a chance, but I believed in the story, which is the first foundational point the author needs. And I was able to get picked up by somebody there. I think the energy of the story and like she kind of equated it to like a Mission Impossible movie. And I
Mhm.
think that energy was something different that Wild Rose doesn't have as often because they're more focused on romance.
A
And I
lot of
think
that.
that need to stand out a little bit.
So, you went to a conference and you actually pitched to a publishing company, to one of their agents there,
Mhm.
and they said, send us some data. Is that the process you used?
Yeah, they had me send like the first, I think, 50 pages and then a synopsis and I think my elevator pitch was done at the pitch, so they
Right.
had that, and I gave them the small bits of it, and then they requested more.
Okay. And that's typical process in these, the ways of doing this. So, and usually they said 2 or 3 chapters, and then you send that to them. They give you a card and say, send me the data. And if you're sharp and you want to do it, you fulfill that as best you can. And you said a synopsis. Now, how for new authors, that's the thing we really haven't gone into here. What does that take for an author to write a synopsis of their book? I mean, it's like going back to high school.
Yeah, yeah. Well, a synopsis, you want to tell the story, but you don't want to go into so much detail that you're just writing out your story again. You want to give the highlights. You want to give the tone, and for me, it was kind of like the speed because for my book, there's a lot. It's really fast. It's a fast read because of the action that goes through it. So
Mhm.
I wanted to let them get that feel of it. So I really just kind of narrowed down the story to the highlights and really like push the action part of it because it's really based a lot in that and the adventure um, and really kind of just highlighted that. It was like a couple pages long. And so, you have to really, you have to really think about what you need to put in there. um, but yeah, it gave them a big hook at the end to kind of like excite them and keep them motivated to contact me. And it kind of mirroring the story, but just in a really condensed version.
All right. So you sent them that along with your original 50 pages or whatever portion they request. And different agents ask for different things. So those of you out there, be prepared for that. Follow their guidelines, their recommendations. Make sure you know what they are before you send it. You know, I hate to waste all that effort. So do follow their recommendations or guidelines on what they're asking for. Okay. And then they got back to you and said, hey, we're interested. This sounds interesting. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. And so they asked for the manuscript, and the agent I'm working with, she read the manuscript. She thought it was great. So she pushed it on up to the next level and had them look at it. And she looked at the entire manuscript, and then she decided where it would place in their list of genres and kind of made the decision whether to keep working with me or not. And I think it was
Mhm.
based on the level of writing quality and how well the story was fleshed out so that, they knew that it was cohesive, made sense, all that stuff.
How well edited was it before you sent it? And did they do additional editing afterwards?
Well, I thought it was edited okay, but I knew it would need more because I didn't, I was just
You
I'm
were
just
new
laying
to
the
this, yeah.
slaughter. And one thing I wish I had done differently is to involve an outside editor earlier on, because I ended up going at the end to an outside editor to have them help me because it,
To
you know,
improve that, yeah.
yeah, and it just started like I knew in my head what it was saying, but it was not what was always on the paper. So I needed an outside look at that. And I worked with an editor here, and then I went to a different person to proof it and get it all formatted to send back, which wasn't required because they do that, but I wanted it to be clean and nice and, cleaned up for them. So I did that.
So they did do editing for you or with you, I guess would be the case.
Yeah.
They tell you, okay, this needs to change or this section doesn't work. Is how does their request for changes work? How does that happen?
There weren't a lot of real issues with the actual story. Where the editing for me was really pronounced was they wanted it in the Chicago style, which being new, I don't come from a writing background, except I
Mhm.
just kind of fell into it in business. But so I wasn't familiar with that. So there's a lot of just like going through the manuscript and changing like to be to like took or, something like that. Um,
Verbiage change in there to
Right,
bring it
right. But
up
as
to
far
that.
as the actual story, there's maybe like a couple places where it needed to be clarified a little bit. During the car chase scene in Cappadocia, Turkey, I needed to kind of clarify that because it was such an unfamiliar and unique landscape that a person who hasn't been there might not quite get the car chase scene. So I had to work that over a bit more. But
Okay, a little more descriptive maybe to show placement or method, those kind of things. And that's pretty common when we as authors picture it, we picture it, and some of that just bypasses because we know what we're talking about or what our picture is, and we don't necessarily get it as good as could be. Well, that's good. And they liked it. Obviously, you got it put together. Now, when it comes down to the full process, how much do you have say on what that is? Do they buy the rights to and things like cover art and all of that, and the style within the book, the print type and all of that? Is that theirs?
yes, they have a staff of graphic designers to do their covers. And you work with them. They ask for you to give examples of other covers that you like and feel would be good
Mhm.
for your book. So I sent over a couple of those, and then we just kind of took off from there. And it was about 3 rounds until we came out with what we have. And as far as like inside, the formatting and everything is done by them. It's mostly like I get some input at this point, but their people handle it, and their decisions are final at that point.
All right. Okay, and what type? Now we're going, that's process and that's all done. They've got the book out there. Now, as far as you as a entry level author, as far as they're concerned, a first time published, what is the process back to you? What is your return? What is your cost? Those things for people that have never been there. What can they expect?
Well, I do get an author's discount on any books I purchase through them, which, it's not a major discount, but it's,
Mhm.
full. And other than that, they put everything up on all the selling sites, Ingram, Amazon, Google Plus, iTunes, Barnes and Noble, the ones up in Canada. Like their books up on theirs, and then they have channels where they promote. But really, I feel like the promotion is more on us. Like they have their automatic things that they do, but we're the ones that need to go out and do interviews and get our newsletter together and our website, things like that.
And that is always the case. That is what I've been told. Until you are a big name. And even then, they expect you to do a large amount of that self promotion of your work. They are publishing.
And I get the feeling it's a constant learning process.
It has been for me. Yes. In fact, with my new series coming out that I'm just starting, I will be going out soon and looking for agency for that. So
Good luck to you.
thank you. So you mentioned your second book, and we have bumped into that before, and that is Argentinian Affair.
Yes, yes, very good. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And you've got some chapters going in that.
I'm about chapter 5, and it's a lot of the situations. There's going to be a supernatural element. There's going to be this time Nazis, and she's going to be dealing with some men problems, and but this time there's a female hitman. So that'll be a new thing.
All right. Yeah. That sounds exciting too. Argentinian Affair. Now that's still one of the Sarah Craft novel series, right?
Right, right. And one thing with working with Wild Rose Press is they in the contract, if my character continues on into other books, then those are part of that contract too.
Automatically
It's an
picked up.
important thing.
All right. So don't goof up and they'll keep you around.
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody wants to put out a bad book.
No kidding.
Yep. I think Robert Dugani told me that.
Oh yeah.
Now, at one time, spring, when we talked to you, you talked about some of the process you use, some of the tools of the trade that you use. So, what did you end up changing anything? How did you go about actually writing? What is your process?
Well, it started out with an outline just for fun. I didn't really see myself as a writer. And so I did the outline, thought it was good. So I started doing some research and I brought in elements of things that I enjoy. I picked places I like to visit, and I liked the supernatural elements. In the Argentinian affair, there's a vessel that is an actual thing that they found that has Sumerian writing on it, but it was located in Bolivia. So, Sumeria being in Iraq, that's
Mhm.
quite a jump from in ancient cultures. So I try to find something intriguing with the supernatural element that can connect some things and play like be another character kind of in the story.
Absolutely.
And then I look to history to find some inspiration for the different characters. Of course, Sarah will remain the same, but the bad guys are all different. And that I turn to the notable Nazi figures that, so many of them went down to South America. So I looked to
Mhm.
those to get some good ideas for things that they might have done. And I just dive into their psyches and try to pretend I'm them for a couple hours for as long as I can handle it. And yeah, I go from there.
So you really are Susan Kraft. And that's what I get.
Well, my
Except you
alter
stay at
ego.
home a lot.
My alter ego.
Exactly. Because we write what we know and what we think and what we feel. And so it does tend to be a lot of us, although it takes its own energy, it creates its own person. And we end up writing that person and they kind of create their own story. Yeah, we're creating it, but actually that person does. It's very interesting. I love that part
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah, and I think like when I began writing about, in that character, I really kind of tried to tap into that time in my life when I was more adventurous in my 20s and I traveled a lot and I saw a lot of different things. I really tried to bring that spirit of that freedom back to her because well, in this next book, she's kind of battling with these two men that she's involved with, like the two pieces of her that wants freedom, but she also wants family and she wants a nice life, and she has to kind of, those two sides of her are kind of
Sure.
shown in these two men. And that's something I've thought about.
Yeah,
You pass up that independence, but you
sure.
get this family. So, it's a decision that you have to make in life.
Well, for her, it would be security versus espionage. There's nothing secure about it. It
Yeah.
may be for country, for belief, for, those kind of things, but it's not secure. And I
Yeah.
can see your character arc. That is something that I've been fighting recently. Like, what is the character arc? And this is for writers that you have to consider. Where do they start? Where do you want them to end up?
Hmm.
And in a series, where did they start? And 2 or 3 books later, where do you want them to end up? How do they grow instead of just the same thing over and over and over? Yeah,
Hmm.
you can do that, but if you're going to make a long series, you want some change in that person more than just another chapter of the story. So
Yeah.
that's a consideration there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, if you want to write a compelling character, you can't do it without internal conflict, I think. That's what really connects with the reader, I believe. But, eventually things fall into place, and work. So
It works, absolutely. We hope it works, and it must for you. You're published. Your book is brand new out there. Is it even on the shelf yet?
it's November 11th. It'll be out there.
Okay. The Byzantine Cross by Dena Weigel. Support her and her work as a new author, and we'll get to see what comes out next, which is Argentinian Affair.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that will be soon. Dana, thank you for spending some time with us this morning. We appreciate it. And, keep going, and we'll have you back on because I want to see how it all changes and grows. I'd like to follow you as a new author and your progress and good input for other authors.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I'd love to. And if
And
you want to find me, if you want to find out more information about me or the books that I'm writing and the Byzantine Cross, you can go to denaweigel.com.
all right, there you are. And of course, her book will be on DurhamPublishing.com, the bookstore there. So you can check it out. Check out everything else we have, including other Author in the Headlights episodes. And until next time, I want to thank you for being with us. Dana, thank you for being with us. And I'll see you again this spring when we go to several conferences, probably. We bump
Yeah.
into each other.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Strider.
Sponsored by DurhamPublishing.com.